Here's a concern people have with how religion operates in practice.
Does birthplace determine belief? Have you ever heard that question before? That where you were born will determine what you believe. For instance, if you're born in India, then there's a good chance you'll be a Hindu. Or if you're born in Japan, there's a good chance you'll be a Buddhist. Or if you're born in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or other places in the Middle East, there's a good chance that you'll be a Muslim. Or if you're born here in the United States, in particular, call it the Bible Belt, there's a good chance you'll be a fundamentalist Christian.
Some will use this kind of observation to claim that religion can't really get at the truth because it's so culturally conditioned. Now, what believers are quick to point out is that this isn't a decisive objection to any particular religious belief, because if it was, it would prove too much. After all, the religious person could just answer the skeptic by saying something like, well, if you were born somewhere else, you probably wouldn't be an atheist, so I guess your atheism isn't justified then, now is it? The truth is, we're all in a position where our beliefs and values are influenced by our environment, and our only real option is to be as responsible as we can when weighing what we should believe. But dismissing these kinds of concerns is a little too quick, because there's a good point to be made in the vicinity. The things that seem to motivate and sustain religion long term seem to be all too human. For example, some have pointed out that it looks like we evolved to over-detect agency in the world. Erring on the side of inferring agency is more advantageous than not, and so when you become startled at a noise that turns out to be just the wind, it was still more survival conducive for you to instinctually turn back and worry that something was following you than for you not to do that. These kinds of impulses to be overly sensitive to agency when it's not present have been preserved and may explain our tendency to believe in invisible others. Further, religion may have helped cohere social groups in a unique way, as well as provide a way to manage our fear of death.
So we are uniquely cursed as a species that we know we're going to eventually die, and that thought, if we think about it too much, is traumatic, and we need to cope with it somehow. We need to negotiate it somehow. And so much of religion is, coping with the idea of death, thinking about the afterlife and what might come after this earthly life. It's full of stories about people that have cheated death and have survived death. And so much of it are rituals dealing with death.
My point in bringing these things up is not to say that they are definitive disproof of any particular religion, but to point out that there are plausible ways to explain the origins and persistence of religion on a large scale that don't require us to begin from the starting point that any of them are true, which is significant. There's more to be gleaned from looking at the religious reality on the ground, though. And in fact, what we observe can be used to argue against theistic religions specifically. One way to do this is to press the problem of religious diversity. As Felipe explains, quote, historically, the world has contained thousands of different religious beliefs, and many of these are incompatible with one another. These incompatibilities cover a range of beliefs, including the existence, nature, and number of divine beings, the path to salvation, the nature of the cosmos, etc. This is surprising on the hypothesis of a perfectly good personal foundation, for such diversity has brought great confusion about the nature of this personal foundation and how to properly relate to it. But prima facie, one would expect a good personal foundation to prevent such obstacles to properly relating to it. By contrast, religious diversity and ambiguity are not surprising on naturalism, for on the latter view, there is no such person aiming to have a loving relationship with us. End quote. If you wanted to put this into an argument, here's how you could do it. This becomes particularly troubling when we zoom in on the issue of confusion around salvation.
On the naturalist view, theists disagree about important religious questions for the same reasons that people wear different kinds of clothes and speak different languages: geography, familial groups, peer groups, cultural surroundings, and so on. Theists, on the other hand, have to believe that God is trying to tell us the right answer, yet somehow the answer is unclear. God could have communicated in such a way that there is no ambiguity, or designed our minds such that we naturally intuit the right answer. And since he desires what's best for us, he has reason to dispel confusion on this matter of unmatched importance.
And not only is there vast disagreement on these issues, but assuming one theistic religion is the true one, not everyone is in a situation where they could even relate to God in the correct way, even if they wanted to. This situation seems surprising if a perfectly good and benevolent deity exists and is trying to reveal himself, since presumably we should expect such a deity to be fair and give people an equal opportunity to relate to him in the most beneficial ways. But God's ways are higher than our ways, you might say. There might be reasons that we can't think of for why he might let things play out this way. Well, there are actually some problems with defending God this way that you might not have thought of. Tab this video next to me to see what I mean.